some love for Jimmy.
Okay. Hi, my name is Jimmy, and I have HIV. HIV, for those of you who may not remember or don't know, stands for Human Immunodeficiency Virus, which, if left untreated, can turn into AIDS, which is Acquired Immunodeficiency Syndrome. I've had it for about 20 years. Most of the information I'm going to talk about today, I got from avert.org. That's avert.org. It was a really good website. It had a whole bunch of information. This is from under the section Origin of HIV and AIDS. There were a few theories where it came from. Most of it, the main theory was that it came from chimps in Africa. There were some other more specific theories that basically came from that theory. And then there also was the conspiracy theory that it was cooked up in a laboratory to target specific groups of people. No opinion on that. Once they identified the HIV in the early 80s, after some prodding from some AIDS activists, because it was just affecting mostly the gay community, the research began, and they discovered a drug called AZT. AZT was very effective, but the virus became resistant to it. By 1997, they discovered that a combination of drugs worked with the virus in different ways and were very effective in fighting the virus. As a result of these advances, it looks like the virus can be kept at bay indefinitely. I'm going to start with a brief overview of the history of HIV. Scientists have found HIV in tissue samples dating back to 1959. So it's been in the human population for a while. I believe it probably took the sexual revolution for it to really, and that was a huge factor in it becoming the epidemic. As I stated, the most widely accepted theory is the chimps in Africa theory. Specifically, here I'm sourcing an article from the BBC website from 2006 titled Origin of HIV Found in Wild Chimps. Now, that's not to say that HIV was found in chimps. They found a virus in chimps called SIV, which is simian immunodeficiency virus, and it was very similar to HIV. And they figured that somewhere, because the people in Africa, they hunt the animals that they're around to eat, somewhere in the preparation or the eating of the meat, the virus jumped species and mutated and became HIV in people. Once it was present in the human population, it took 3 courses in becoming the epidemic that it is today. First, it got into the blood supply. People donated blood and they didn't know. And they transfused that blood into individuals. Blood to blood is the most effective way to transmit the virus. It also got into drugs that were made from blood products, drugs like hemophiliacs. And in that way, it could affect hundreds or to thousands of people, because one batch of drugs could be contaminated by just one person. The second way it got into the population was that it found its way into the drug addict community with people who use needles, and they shared needles, and that's just like a blood transfusion. It's blood to blood. It's the easiest way to transmit it. The third way, while not the most effective way to spread it, it's effective enough, was sex. HIV entered the gay male population in clusters in California and New York in the beginning, and once it got into that population, it spread pretty rapidly. One of the biggest problems with HIV is that from the beginning, you're asymptomatic. Some people get like flu-like symptoms right at the very beginning, but for like 10 to 15 years, you have no symptoms while it's attacking your immune system. But you're contagious from before you can ever test positive. So from the CDC website under HIV and AIDS, updated in 2015, if left untreated, in most people it becomes AIDS. It starts to attack the immune system, and that, like I said, generally takes 10 to 15 years. And after that, with the weakened immune system, you get what are called opportunistic infections. One of those is Kaposi sarcoma. It's a skin cancer. I don't know if you saw Philadelphia. I think that's what Tom Hanks had in that movie. There's another one called pneumocystis pneumonia. These are most of them are very deadly diseases, and your immune system is already really weakened, so it didn't take much to kill a person. And it was the presence of one of these opportunistic infections, or a CD4 count, which is a white blood cell, below 200 in a sample of blood, that classified somebody as having AIDS. So I'm going to say that again. It's one opportunistic infection or a CD4 count below 200. However, with treatment, in most people, it can be kept in check. With most people like me, the virus is undetectable. The viral load is undetectable. That's the virus in a sample of blood. And it's not that it's not there at all. They set a threshold. And if it doesn't go above that threshold, they classify it as undetectable. Although we can't say absolutely, because these drugs have only been around for 20 years, it seems as though we reached a plateau where HIV has become a manageable chronic condition and no longer a death sentence. Gay men are still highly at risk. However, at this point, heterosexual black women are the fastest growing population. According to the World Health Organization under HIV and AIDS, as of 2013, there were 35 million people living with HIV, and I'm one of those people. My story starts from before I ever got it. I was younger than the generation of gay men who were completely devastated by this disease. It took out almost an entire generation of gay men. That's not to say I wasn't untouched by it. I had a lot of friends, or not a lot of friends, I had a few friends who died, and some friends who had some very, very close calls and almost died. But by and large, we were lucky to live long enough or to catch it late enough to benefit from the treatments, and we also benefited from the knowledge around safer sex, because in the beginning, nobody knew how it was transferred. For me, it was inevitable. I look back at my behavior, it was inevitable that I was going to get it. With all the drugs I was doing, I consistently engaged in risky behavior. I had this cycle where I would test negative, I'd be really good for a while, but drugs and decision making don't really go well together. I'd screw up, and then I'd just kind of throw up my hands. Well, I screwed up, so I might as well not worry about it anymore. And that cycle would just continue. I remember the night that I'm pretty sure I got it. His name was Peter. We did a lot of drugs. We talked about it. We wore a condom, but the condom broke. We were having a pretty good time. We kept going. And I joke to this day, and it may not be that funny, but I'm not sure it wasn't worth it. Later on, I got tested, and I tested positive. And from that point on, I mean, this is still before all the treatments were around, so it was it. That was it. I was going to die. In a way, it was a relief. I no longer had to worry about testing positive. You know about going in for those tests, that anxiety you feel. I didn't have that anymore. I had the worst one. But I also took it as I didn't have to worry about anything at all. Now, it may sound like it didn't really affect me. My behavior kind of tells a different story because I went off the deep end with drugs. My memory of the time is a little bit hazy. I remember I had to tell my mom. I remember consciously not telling my grandparents because I knew enough at that time that I wasn't going to get sick until after they were dead. So there was no need to worry them about it. I remember telling a friend at work, and she broke down. And I also remember getting very clear signals from friends that I was no longer a viable sexual being, like to my face. I internalized a lot of this stuff, and I had to deal with it to this day. So after years of this, I didn't die. I had to decide what to do. I quit meth. I quit sex. That's another speech. I decided to get on with my life. I continued to work. I struggled with the drugs, but I'm doing okay. I finally decided to go back to school, and that brings us to today. So I've told you a little bit about the treatments, or the history, which doesn't have much of an effect on how we live with HIV today. The treatments, which I should say, this is a very US-centric speech. The treatments are available here. They're not available everywhere. But the treatments have a huge effect on how we're able to live our lives. Although I'm a lot older than a lot of you, I have a lot of the same worries as you do. I just have HIV, and though it's with me forever, it looks like forever, it is going to be a long time.
Woo!
And you can ask me any kind of personal question. I'm open. Yeah.
You said it's contagious before you can test for it. How does that work with like a partner? Like, can you just so they can catch it even if you're testing regularly?
Yes, because the reason why is because once you have been exposed to it, it takes a while for the virus to build up in your blood, and the tests don't test for the virus, they test for the antibodies to the virus. So you're actually very contagious. at the time
Wow.
before you test positive.
It's terrifying.
There's a huge lot of, yeah.
So, sorry, we're
It's
out
okay,
of
it's
time.
fine, yeah.
Clap.
Woo! Woo! Nice job, Jimmy.